Nearly 3 weeks after the Boston Marathon bombings, the national media is still covering the story aggressively, camping out on Copley Square with a bevy of big-name journalists. That's reasonable as long as the story is still developing. But at some point, the national press may find that it's overstayed its welcome. The Copley Square memorial to the Boston Marathon bombings remains packed with visitors this week. Some snap pictures, others stand silently. A few are overwhelmed with emotion. And just a few feet away, the media is still firmly encamped, ensuring that the bombings and their aftermath remain a national story. The media crush isn't quite as intense as it was right after the bombings, when news organizations from around the world converged on Boston. Still, the media row on Boylston Street is impossible to miss. But for what it's worth, visitors to the memorial don't seem to mind.
It's still an emotional, respectful place, and I think that the media has to be here so the rest of the world can see it.
That sentiment, that the media isn't an intruder but an ally, is a popular one.
It doesn't detract from the memorial. It's good that it keeps people's mind on the events that took place, and the longer the better as far as I'm concerned.
And it's just wonderful to see them here, because I'm wondering what's going to happen when they leave.
Maybe when the national media finally exits, the memorial itself will become less of a draw, or maybe not. The trick for the networks will be getting out before Boston decides they've stayed too long. You know, I'm reminded of back during the Newtown shootings, the media was there for weeks on end also, and finally the townspeople said, this is enough, this is crazy, you've got to get out. It's a little different here because it's a public area, it's Copley Square. It's actually not that intrusive. I mean, they're parked on Boylston Street. There is no parking in Boylston Street, so the fact that they're parking there doesn't really matter. It's a wide enough street. But, you know, at some point, I think that one thing feeds the other, that the media being there feeds the kind of growth of this memorial that's, you know, grown exponentially in the last couple of days. And at some point it becomes kind of, I don't know, so there's something a little slightly unseemly about it. Even though I live right there and I go by it almost every day, people are genuinely touched and moved when they show up. So I'm conflicted. Is the easy way to put it.
Me too. Me too, because on the one hand, I think there's an urge for people that have that live nearby to go. It's almost like this is the scene, and there's something, I should go there, and I should show my children, and they should understand this is where it happened. This is going to become an historic scene in Boston. On the other hand, there's a fine line between that and things getting almost touristy and almost and ghoulish. So it's hard. And then, of course, you have the television cameras recording the whole thing, but like you, it's both sides. You know, it's both sides. I wouldn't
be upset if they left this weekend.
I would not be upset if they left this weekend, but I understand why people want to go there.
The media will be there for a week longer than they should in the end. I don't know that we're there yet. It's still pretty fresh. You look at how, I mean, not that they're comparable, but the public and the media stayed at ground zero after 9/11 for months. I don't think we're going to see that. But certainly another week or two would be, I don't think, offensive to anybody, and I would think at some point it'll start to wind down. You mentioned Newtown. I remember that one of the top editors of the newspaper there issued a plea to his colleagues to, you know, please, enough.
Well, I think what's happening here is that there are still pieces of this unfolding aside from the memorial. They happen to be stationed by the memorial, but they're using really Boston as a backdrop while all these other stories keep unfolding. I mean, we've even been surprised by the twists and turns that this keeps happening. So rather than, you know, fly in the major anchors, they have people stationed here who can follow up on the stories. I mean, let's not forget, these people are reporters, so they're out working, and it makes sense to be where that action is. So I can't say when they'll leave because we're still in very early stages of the unfolding.
It's just the location they have chosen. I mean, it's one thing to be out, but their anchor base is right in front of the memorial. Of course, where else are you going to go? If you're covering a flood, you want to stand in front of the flood.
Right.
There's always this issue with a big national story when the media is camped out on a prime piece of commercial real estate, obviously not public property, otherwise they would have been booted a long time ago. But I was actually in Newtown. It was the last big story that I reported for ABC News, and it was actually 4 or 5 days after the shooting, you remember the shooting happened on a Friday, that you got the sense that a backlash was beginning and that they felt like they couldn't grieve properly. I'm talking about the families, the entire town. They couldn't grieve properly. They couldn't heal as long as there were dozens of satellite trucks parked up and down Main Street. I think in this case, though, in Boston, you have to ask the question, are they doing more good than harm being there? Is it relevant that they're there? Could they be doing a live shot over at the courthouse or over, let's say, at the prison and reporting just as in-depth coverage as they are now? It's hard to say. And you mentioned Ground Zero. Obviously, that was a situation where the recovery effort went on for months, and so it was relevant that the news crews remained down there. I'm not so sure with Copley Square.
I will say there is a story down there with all of them gathered, and that's about the Westin Copley. I haven't seen anybody do that yet because they've been hosting all of these crews for from the beginning until now, which is actually fairly amazing. So I'm sure there's community stuff happening within the media that might be interesting to know, and also just about why the Westin signed on for that, because this is a pretty luxurious hotel, so they're giving up some real estate to do that.
Yeah.